What a great transition. Okay. I need to confess something before I start. This is going to come across as perhaps heretical to some of you, but I've been eating pizza for lunch for the past 4 days, and I could honestly never eat pizza again in my whole life. Probably. You're right, today I had donuts for lunch. Okay. What? Oh, David. Okay. So, No, Jonathan, come back. Sit down. Ooh. Okay. So we are, in fact, talking about stuff tonight. And before we even get started, I just want to kind of clear the air and say that I wish that I could stand up here and talk about something that, like, I'm not struggling with, or that, like, I've overcome and I'm standing on the other side of it. But the truth is I just wanted to kind of have, like a real conversation tonight. And in light of that, I just wanted to clear the air up front and say that I'm by no stretch of the imagination done with what we're talking about. I have not figured it out, nor do I have all the right answers. But I think that we can have some important conversations together this way, and like share in each other's suffering and downfalls, and learn from each other, and then communicate that way and build community through that. So yeah, like if what we're talking about tonight, if you would know anything about what I've been walking through the past couple months, and then you heard me speak tonight, you would straight up call me a hypocrite and walk out of the door, and rightfully so. So tonight, I just want to level with you, and I want to do my best not to talk at you, and more to talk with you. So tonight, audience participation is encouraged and invited and accepted if that's something that anybody feels like doing. It doesn't have to be a sit and listen and wait for it to be over. And because I'm super good at transitions, I'm going to ask a seemingly totally unrelated question, but I promise we'll circle around to it. What is culture? What is society? No, don't. Oh, all right. David, you're not allowed to participate. So what is culture? If you were talking to somebody from another country and they asked you, what's the culture of America like? What would you tell them? What would you say to them? And maybe that's a little too broad, so let me narrow it down. Let's be more specific. What if somebody asked you what the culture of your school was, or the culture of a restaurant that you frequent? Or even better yet, if somebody asked you what the culture of YA was, of this room, what would you tell them? Would you even know how to begin to answer this question? Who asks what is culture? Nobody. I don't. But, huh? Okay. Apparently educators ask that question. I'm clearly not an educator. So in order to talk about this, let's just start by defining culture. Like, dictionary definition of culture says that culture is the arts and other manifestations of human intellectual achievement regarded collectively. I don't know what that means either. In other words, it's the customs, arts, social institutions, and achievements of a particular nation, people, or other social groups. I'm going to dumb that down even further, not for you, but for me. Culture is the things that we create. And more specifically, culture are the things that we create that tell a story about who we are. Right? We love, like, sitting around the campfire and singing songs and telling stories, and, like, Halloween comes around and we tell scary ghost stories, and, like, we eat it up, right? We love to tell stories. And when you think about it, like, the paintings that we make, the drawings that we draw, the photographs we take, the music we sing, and the dancing that we choreograph, the movies we produce, They all tell a story, but more specifically, they tell a story about us. They tell a story about who we are. And in 1,000 years from now, archaeologists, if they can dig up a USB out of the ground and plug it into a computer, in 1,000 years from now, archaeologists are going to dig up the things that we leave behind, and they're going to use those things to understand who we were. The things that we create and the things that we leave behind tell a story about who we are, and in generations to come, they will be used so that way people can understand where we came from, what we believed, what we liked, what we enjoyed, what we didn't. Right? And if you think about this, like, the Bible does the same thing. Like, the Bible is just a collection of stories throughout history, right? And so to put it in perspective, our God, the God who created us and put us all here in this room together, has decided forever ago that the best way for us to get to know him was through a book of stories that he told. Right? That's really what the Bible is. It's God's way of revealing his character to us. We get to know God by the stories that he tells in the book that we read. We love stories, and our culture is the stories that we tell about who we are. So to wrap this whole culture thing into kind of like a nice little nutshell bow tie, if somebody asked what the culture of YA was, who would you tell them we are? Are we good, Jesus-loving people who are passionate about what we do? Do we love loving other people? Are we dedicated to this ministry? And are we open to new visitors? Do we create a welcome environment for people to build Christian community and worship God together? And do we worship God with all of our best? Or are we a group of young kids who get together on a Tuesday night and fool around because nothing matters to us? And do we only talk to people we know because we're content living our comfortable lifestyles? So much so that we don't notice when new people walk in the door and we're too scared to embrace them when they do. Or are we somewhere in between? Probably, hopefully. So better yet, as we're talking about culture, who do we want to be? And are we those people now? And so in light of this, what I kind of want to do tonight is just tell a little bit of my story from the past couple months, if that's all right with y'all. There will be, honestly, like very little teaching going on. But I just want to tell a little bit of my story, if that's all right. Cool. So I'm having a midlife crisis. Okay. Yeah. 42, we're capping it out. Midlife is right now. Hey, we're getting married pretty fast, so you know we'll check off all the boxes before it's time.
Hey, at least your kids, when they watch back and look at this moment, they'll be like, "Wow, that was when Dad was a baby."
Wow, Dad looked the same then when he died. Right. Okay, no, not really having a midlife crisis, but to say that these past couple months for me haven't been a struggle would be an understatement, for sure. For one reason or another, I've just been in like this very deep valley. Who knows why? Just a couple months of just like very deep, debilitating anxiety and depression, stress and worry beyond all belief over nothing. And yeah, that's the part that sucks the most, is that like there's nothing that happened. Like I didn't lose a family member, or I didn't lose my job or anything dramatic or traumatic like that. It just like kind of was. And when I look back over the past couple months, like there's really nothing wrong. Like I'm moving out of my mom's house in 2 months. I just got a 65-inch TV. I'm getting married. I was saving the best for last. Maybe I won't be moving out of my mom's house. Right, but like nothing's really that bad about my life. But for whatever reason, I've just lost focus. I've lost passion about the things that I'm passionate about, and I've had little sense of direction about where I am or where I want to go or what I want to do with my life. And it's been very frustrating. But I've come to hate my job, and like I said, I've lost interest and passion about the things that I'm passionate about. More often than not, I find myself angry and irritated by the things that normally wouldn't get under my skin. Like when Hannah and I are watching Survivor on the couch, and she forgets where I am and then throws her hair into my face as Jeff is revealing the last vote at Tribal Council. But for real, like it's just been a very dry season for me. And the longer it goes on, the more irritated that I become because I can't figure out why. I can't figure out what's going on or what the root cause of any of it is. And it becomes so frustrating and irritating to me. Like, is there a lesson to be learned here? Am I waiting for something? Is the clear mindset that I'm looking for buried in a wheat field and I have to go dig it up somewhere? It's irritating, to say the least. Right? And the more that I search for answers or ways out of this season, of this valley, the more I just find dead ends. And that's when I start to question, am I a good Christian? Am I doing this whole Christian church thing right? Am I getting something wrong? Am I not worthy enough? Did I miss something? Am I being punished? And my anxious mind runs through the worst of the worst scenarios in my head of, okay, this is why you're here, so suck it up and let's go to work. Right? And it becomes really disheartening because during this season, I just want so badly to hear God's voice, and no matter what I do, it seems like I can't. And that sucks. And maybe some of you can jump on this train. Maybe not. That's fine too. But if you've been there, or if you are there now, but the more that I learn about this sort of season of life, the more I learn that it's a fairly common thing. At one point or another in your spiritual walk, it may happen. And I find myself struggling to find answers to the questions that I have of why I'm here and how to move forward. And I think it's funny how in the moment when you're all hopped up on emotion and the energy of the situation, how you just red line see straight through and nothing outside your purview of what's directly in front of you. And I find it funny how even when God delivers the answer on a silver plate and rings the dinner bell, we can get so narrow-minded that we just completely bypass it and keep walking. I think prevenient grace is such a beautiful thing. That's being able to look back at a past situation and finding God in that moment, even when we didn't see it during that time. But it's during times like that when I've realized that that's sometimes the best teachable moment. When you're down in that valley and it seems like you're all alone and God's not talking to you and you have no idea where to go, but then 2 months later you can look back and be like, oh, it was right there the whole time. And I'll say personally, I can see that looking back, I can see the places that God was trying to teach me things. And if it's all right, I would just like to share a couple of the things that I've learned with you tonight. And this is the deepest I'll go into teaching. These are true for me. They might not be true for everybody, but if you're walking through the same thing, you're not alone, and maybe sharing these things can help. So some of the things that I've learned. Sometimes I think God puts you in really deep valleys just to show you how bad you really need him. you will never need God the way that you do when you're in a valley. And I think sometimes he puts you there. Sometimes I think he puts me there and continues to do it over and over again because he's showing me continuously that he is the end goal. He is the means to the end. And that when he provides the mountain peak, the mountaintop, whatever, when he provides the good times, like that's from him. And whether you're in a deep valley or riding a high mountain, you need him, I need him just as bad in both scenarios. I might be struggling, and I need him for that. But when I'm riding a high, I need him just the same. I don't get to throw God away when something good happens and only invite him in when I'm struggling, when I need him, and when I'm asking him to do things for me. The other thing that I think I've learned is not to waste the time that you have in the season that you have it in. There's always a lesson to be learned, and there's always a purpose to everything, no matter how cheesy and corny and generic that sounds, but there is a purpose to everything. And that while we're here on this side of eternity, as long as we wake up, there is work to do. There are things that we are being called to do. There is work that is still being done to us from God. And that's a good thing, because if we're here, it means there's still purpose, there's still meaning, and there's still reason to carry on and to continue to tread the water through the valley. But what happens when you're spiritually dry? What do you do when you have no motivation and no ambition and no inspiration, when you don't want to read the word, when you don't want to pray, and even if you did, you wouldn't know what to say? When you can't physically find the words, what do you do? When reading the word isn't enough to pull you out of the valley, what do you do? Here's a couple things, and might I add that this is not something that I've gotten right at all in the past 2 months. I struggle with this on the daily. I still do, and I will after we all leave here tonight. But I just want to share. Start with gratitude. Find anything and everything to be grateful for. When it seems like the world is against you, there are good things that are coming your way and that have already come your way. And it's important to find those things and express nothing but reverent gratitude to God for providing those things. In the third Psalm, David, OG David, not this David, he opens this psalm by saying, Lord, how many are my foes? How many rise up against me? Many are saying of me, God will not deliver him. Right? And like he's lamenting, like no matter where OG David turns, like he's got enemies all around him. He's being chased, he's being persecuted, they want him dead. If they found him, they would torture him. And he's saying, God, they're all around me. No matter where I turn, somebody's trying to come after me. They're trying to get into my home, into my stuff. Right? And then a couple verses later, he says, I lie down and sleep. I wake again because the Lord sustains me. I will not fear though tens of thousands assail me on every side. And so OG David, here, even through all of this, is finding that little glimmer of hope that, okay, yeah, there's a bunch of bad dudes outside, but I'm alive. Like I found that good thing. And I think it's super important for us to find those things to be grateful for and express our gratitude to God for providing them. So after finding gratitude, find community and gain accountability by creating a culture through telling your story. God is able to create the culture of his kingdom by telling his stories through the lens of Scripture. And Paul kind of tells us this in the 3rd chapter of Ephesians. He says, "And I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, may have power together with all the Lord's holy people to grasp how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ, and to know that this love that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled to the measure of all fullness of God." And he's talking to the church of Ephesus, and I have to imagine that when he's saying this, he's telling them, like, hey, if you want everything that God has for you, you got to be a community. Because notice that he didn't say, you as an individual learn about Jesus. He says that being rooted and established in love may have the power together as the Lord's holy people to grasp the love of Christ. That together as a church, together as God's people who create a community with culture in a church, that then and only then will we begin to experience Christ the way that he would like to reveal himself to us. And that's not to say that Jesus can't be experienced outside the church or that you can't pray when you're alone. But that when we gather here together on a Tuesday night or on a Sunday morning or pick another day of the week at another time, that when you gather together with God's people, that there is a purpose for you being there and that together you're supposed to be working towards the same goal. And I feel like we can't do that if we're not building proper community. And like I said, I am not innocent of this. I have stood up here and played on stage and interacted with everybody and done the exact opposite of everything that I'm talking about here tonight. So tonight, I want to challenge us, myself included, to start telling stories. Talk to people that you don't know. Take that courageous step and ask somebody what their name is if you don't know it. Learn something about somebody. And so tonight, in lieu of 3 questions for a breakout, I would like to invite all of us to get into small groups and tell a story. It doesn't have to be something super deep. You don't have to lay out your deepest, darkest secret to somebody that you don't know. But tell a story that matters. Tell a story that says something about who you are. Who do we want to be? What kind of culture do we want to create here? Because we are the only ones that are going to do it. No one's going to do it for us. And so I would invite us all to come together and start to build the community, start to build the culture through the storytelling that we want to create for perhaps a lasting legacy, or at the very least, a group of young adults who get together on a Saturday night and love people so much that anybody who walks in the door only sees Jesus. That's it. No prayer. Go.